He thought he was a god. He walked barefoot across marble floors, demanded worship, and dressed as Jupiter, the king of the gods. He laughed as nobles were tortured, forced senators to watch their children die, and once planned to cut off all of Rome's grain supply just to see the people starve. This is the true story of Emperor Caligula, the ruler who turned the Roman Empire into a nightmare and died at the hands of those closest to him. You're about to hear a story of madness, power, and one of the bloodiest ends in Roman history. Before he was Caligula, his name was Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus. He was born in 12 AD, the son of one of Rome's greatest military heroes, Germanicus. His father was loved by the army. His mother, Agrippina the Elder, was a noble and fierce woman, connected to the legendary Augustus himself. As a child, Gaius marched with his father's legions, dressed in a tiny soldier's uniform. The troops loved him. They called him Caligula, which means little boots, a nickname that stuck. But childhood wasn't all smiles. At the age of 7, Caligula watched his father grow sick, likely poisoned, and die in Syria. His mother blamed the emperor at the time, Tiberius, and her rage didn't go unnoticed. Tiberius responded the Roman way. He turned cold and ruthless. One by one, Caligula's family members were arrested, exiled, or starved to death. His mother? Starved. His brothers? Exiled and killed. Only Caligula survived. But survival came with a price. Tiberius eventually took young Caligula, not out of love, but caution. The boy was popular, dangerous. So Tiberius brought him to his island palace of Capri, a place of luxury, secrets, and horror. This wasn't a normal palace. Capri was where Tiberius lived out his darkest fantasies, a place whispered about in Rome as a den of perversion and fear. Executions, torture, abuse, all were part of daily life. And in the middle of it all, Caligula watched. He learned, and he waited. By the time Tiberius died in 37 AD, Caligula was 24 years old. The people cheered his rise. Rome had suffered under the cold rule of Tiberius. Caligula seemed like a fresh light, young, charming, handsome. The city threw wild parties in his honor. For the first 6 months, Caligula ruled wisely. He gave bonuses to the army, freed prisoners, and threw games that filled the streets with celebration. But then everything changed. 6 months into his reign, Caligula became gravely ill. Some say it was poison. Others say it was epilepsy. But when he finally recovered, he wasn't the same. Gone was the smiling young emperor. In his place stood something darker, colder, hungrier for power. He began executing people at random. His cousin? Beheaded. A senator who joked about him? Tortured to death. Even his brother-in-law, a powerful noble, was forced to take his own life. His cruelty wasn't just political, it was personal. He forced families to watch as their loved ones died. He told nobles that their wealth now belonged to him. If someone grew too popular, too rich, too liked, they vanished. And Caligula didn't hide it. In fact, he laughed. He once said, "I wish the Roman people had but one neck, so I could cut it all at once." The man who once promised Rome hope had become its nightmare. At some point, Caligula decided he wasn't just emperor. He was a god. He demanded temples in his name. He ordered statues of Jupiter to be replaced with statues of himself. He dressed in golden robes, walked barefoot, and demanded people worship him, or else. He even built a bridge across the Bay of Naples, just so he could ride across it like a god riding the sea. Then came his horse, Incitatus. Caligula adored this horse more than most people. He fed it gold-flecked oats, built it a marble stall, and gave it servants. At one point, he threatened to make Incitatus a senator, just to mock Rome's political elite. But behind the madness was something worse. Paranoia. He stopped sleeping. He ordered food tasters for every meal. He accused anyone who looked at him the wrong way of treason. One nobleman was executed just for dreaming that Caligula would die. The emperor was falling apart, and he was taking Rome with him. Caligula began taxing everything. Marriage? Taxed. Lawsuits? Taxed. Even brothels were taxed. And Caligula opened one inside the palace to make sure the money flowed in. People starved while the emperor bathed in wine. He declared war on Neptune, the god of the sea. His soldiers were ordered to stab the waves and collect seashells as spoils of war. They obeyed out of fear. Then came his own family. He slept with his sisters. At least one of them, Drusilla, was treated like a goddess. After she died mysteriously, Caligula never recovered. He began having visions, talking to statues, believing that he would live forever. And then, finally, the whisper started, not from rebels, but from the palace itself. One man had seen enough. Cassius Chaerea, a captain of the Praetorian Guard. Caligula mocked him for being too soft. He insulted his voice, called him names, made him kiss his hand in public. But Chaerea had served Rome long before Caligula, and now he would serve it again. Alongside a group of senators and fellow guards, Chaerea planned the assassination. The goal was simple: catch Caligula alone, strike fast, end the madness. And on January 24th, 41 AD, they got their chance. It was a rainy afternoon. Caligula had just left the theater. He walked through a quiet corridor behind the palace, surrounded by only a few guards and aides. As he turned a corner, Chaerea struck. The first blow pierced Caligula's neck. He screamed. Others joined in, stabbing, slashing, tearing into the man who once believed he was a god. Witnesses say he was stabbed over 30 times. His body collapsed in the hallway, his blood soaking the marble floor. His wife and daughter were murdered shortly after. When the news hit Rome, the city held its breath. And then it exhaled. The monster was gone. After Caligula's assassination, many Romans tried to forget. But to understand how it got so bad, you have to look deeper. You see, Caligula wasn't born evil. He was a child raised in a blood-soaked palace. When your father is murdered, your mother is starved to death, and your brothers disappear into exile, all before you're 18. Something inside breaks. Some people heal. Others grow bitter. But Caligula, he learned one thing. Love is weakness. Fear is power. So he sharpened his smile and used it like a knife. At first, that made him clever. He could read people. He knew exactly how to make them trust him, right before he crushed them. But slowly, the cracks began to show. He couldn't sleep. He'd walk the palace halls at night, talking to himself. He started seeing things, hearing voices. One guard said he once found the emperor weeping over a broken statue of his sister, whispering apologies between gasps of rage. The man who ruled the world was falling apart. You might wonder, why didn't the Senate stop him? The truth is, they were terrified. Caligula turned the Senate into his personal stage. Senators were forced to run beside his chariot, chant his name in public, and dress like women at his feasts. If they refused, he ruined them, financially or physically. He turned them into actors in a play no one wanted to be in. One senator was forced to give his own wife to the emperor for a night. Another had to kneel and kiss Caligula's feet for hours, only to be executed the next morning. And the people, they were too poor to rise up and too scared to speak. Every whisper could be reported. Every joke could be your last. Caligula once had an entire crowd killed just because one man insulted him, and he didn't know who. That's the kind of fear that keeps a man on the throne, until it doesn't. In his final months, Caligula spiraled. He ordered giant golden statues of himself to be placed in every temple. He talked to the moon, held conversations with the god Jupiter, and forced senators to sacrifice to his image. He even planned to move the capital of the Roman Empire to Alexandria, Egypt, because the people there worshiped living gods. He wanted to rule from a place that treated him like a deity. That plan scared the Senate more than anything. If Caligula left Rome, the people might see just how weak the emperor really was. And so, quietly, the knives were drawn. Let's go back to that rainy afternoon, January 24th, 41 AD. It was part of a festival, the Palatine Games. Caligula had just left the theater after watching a performance. He was headed through an underground passageway back to the palace. The guards were light. His mood was calm. No one expected anything. Then, from the shadows, Cassius Chaerea stepped forward. He called out a signal. And before Caligula could speak, The blade sank into his neck. He cried out, not like a god, but like a man, like a child. Then others joined in. The emperor fell, but they didn't stop. Some say he was stabbed over 30 times. Others say it was more. It wasn't just murder. It was revenge. Every blade was a message. You are not a god. You are not untouchable. You are just flesh. You might think the people cheered when they heard the news. They didn't. They were terrified. The city froze. The Senate didn't know what to do. Caligula was dead, but who ruled now? That night, the Praetorian Guard stormed the palace and found Caligula's uncle, Claudius, hiding behind a curtain, shaking. They dragged him out, and to everyone's shock, proclaimed him emperor. Claudius had always played the fool, stuttering, limping, staying quiet. But maybe that's what saved him. Caligula had ignored him, thinking he was harmless. Now, that harmless man would rule an empire. The Senate wanted to restore the Republic, but it was too late. Rome had changed. Power now came from the sword, not the Senate floor. So what became of Caligula's name? It was erased. Temples were torn down. Statues were destroyed. His name was condemned from memory. But history has a long shadow, and we still remember him. The emperor who bathed in gold and blood, who claimed to be a god but died like a beast, who began as a hopeful prince and ended as Rome's nightmare. Some historians say Caligula was insane. Others believe he was poisoned. Some say it was trauma, that watching your family murdered and being raised by a paranoid emperor on an island of cruelty will break anyone. But maybe it was all of it. Power doesn't always corrupt. Sometimes it attracts the corrupted. And when that corruption reaches the throne, no one is safe. This isn't just a Roman story. It's a human one, about what happens when pain goes untreated, when power goes unchecked, when no one dares say no. Caligula isn't just a name from the past. He's a mirror. He reminds us of the danger of blind loyalty, of unchecked ego, of worshiping men as gods. He ruled for 1,400 days. And yet, nearly 2,000 years later, we still whisper his name, because the fall of Caligula is a warning that still matters. If you made it this far, thank you. You've just walked through one of the darkest chapters in history. If you want more stories like this, real, raw, and powerful, hit that subscribe button. We've got stories coming that school never told you. And let me ask you this. If you had lived in Caligula's time, would you have stayed silent or taken the risk to stop him? Let's talk in the comments. History remembers the monsters, but also the ones brave enough to face them.